2 kids missing 5 years. Found after a German shepherd at the rotten orchard dug into a hidden room. People searched 5 years for Lily and Connor. Police failed. Feds failed. Even hope failed. But Rex didn't need a badge. He just needed a scent. He was a German shepherd who refused to walk past a lie. When his paws hit that rotting orchard floor, he didn't uncover a trail. He dug up the reason why everyone else had stopped looking. The train dragged itself into Cedar Hollow like an exhausted animal, wheezing out one last breath before going still. Ethan Hale stepped onto the platform with a duffel that had survived 2 deployments and 1 messy divorce. The Montana cold hit him first, then the silence. Cedar Hollow wasn't a town so much as a memory of one. A few shuttered shops, a diner with 1 working neon letter, a place where people didn't wander unless they had nowhere left to go. That made him fit right in. Rex jumped down after him, landing with the controlled grace only working dogs had. The German shepherd scanned the platform, ears forward, nose twitching, muscles coiled. He wasn't a house pet. He wasn't even fully retired. He was a soldier whose rank had been inked into instinct. Ethan shoved his free hand into his coat pocket and exhaled white fog. He had driven away from bigger cities before. He had walked away from barracks and empty apartments, from people he loved and people he tried to love. But this return, to an orchard he barely remembered, felt different. He didn't know if it was dread or obligation. Maybe both. His uncle, a man Ethan hadn't seen since childhood, had left him a house, a rotting apple orchard, and a single line in the will. Take care of the dog. No explanation. No apology. Just 30 acres of dead trees and a German shepherd with a name that didn't match his calm demeanor. Rex, rusted iron, loyal metal. Ethan found the pickup waiting for him behind the station, his uncle's old Chevy, paint peeling, 1 mirror held on by wiring. Rex hopped into the passenger seat, took 1 look around, then pressed his nose to the window as if memorizing every sound. Ethan started the engine. It coughed awake, rattling like bones in a drawer. The road stretched empty. Pines bowed in the wind. Fences sagged under snow. Ethan drove without speaking, and Rex stayed alert without resting. Only when the orchard came into view did the dog stiffen. The gate hung crooked, chain rusted halfway through. Beyond it, rows of apple trees stood like gravestones, bark peeling, branches bare. The farmhouse crouched at the edge of the property, windows fogged with grime. It didn't look abandoned. It looked offended. Ethan cut the engine and stepped out. Rex leapt from the truck before Ethan could call him back. The dog trotted ahead, nose low, tail still. Too still. He wasn't exploring. He was assessing. Inside the house, the air smelled of dust, cold metal, and a faint hint of something Ethan couldn't place. Not rot, not mold, something older. He tossed the duffel down. The thud echoed through empty rooms. Rex paced a slow perimeter around the living room, then sat facing the back door, ears raised in a silent warning. Ethan sighed. He didn't believe in omens, but the dog had saved lives before. He had earned his instincts. Night fell fast. The house creaked under the weight of winter. Ethan lay on a sunken mattress upstairs, staring at ceiling cracks shaped like veins. Sleep never came easy. It came even harder in unfamiliar silence. He shut his eyes, but his mind dragged him backward. Sand, smoke, screams, the ache of losing men who never came home. Then Rex barked. Not a casual bark, not a warning, a command. Urgent, explosive. Ethan bolted upright. For a split second, the room blurred into a tent in Kandahar. He shook it off, grabbed the flashlight from his duffel, and ran. Rex's barks echoed across the orchard, slicing through the cold. Ethan burst onto the porch. Rex was already halfway to the far edge of the property, charging toward the oldest apple tree in the orchard. Its twisted trunk rose like a giant's hand frozen mid-reach. Ethan sprinted after him, boots slipping over frost. Rex reached the tree first and began to dig, paws throwing soil behind him in frantic bursts. Dirt flew, roots snapped, his growls rumbled as if he were trying to dig someone out, or something up. Ethan knelt. Rex didn't stop, not even when Ethan reached out. The dog's body vibrated with certainty. His paws hammered the earth like he was unearthing a bomb. And then Ethan heard it. A hollow thud beneath the soil. Not a root, not a stone. Something else. Something man-made. He froze. Rex didn't. The dog scraped faster, deeper. Ethan pushed him back gently and scooped away the loose dirt. The beam of the flashlight trembled in his hand. Under the roots was wood. Old, rotten, but shaped, like a cover. Ethan swallowed. Adrenaline rose like heat under his skin. He pressed his palm against the wood. It flexed. A breath of stale, cold air escaped from beneath it. Not a cellar, not a coffin, a space. Rex backed up a step, but not out of fear. Out of readiness, his muscles tight, his eyes locked on the wooden panel as if he expected it to move. Ethan lifted it. The panel groaned. A gap opened. A draft hit Ethan's face like a whisper from the dark. The scent was unmistakable now. Old concrete, rust, and something faintly sweet, like apples that had died long ago. He aimed the flashlight down. A narrow staircase descended into blackness. Ethan's pulse hammered. He had inherited a dying orchard, a silent dog, and a house full of secrets. He hadn't expected a hidden room. Rex stepped forward and placed one paw on the first stair, looking back at Ethan as if to say, "We go now." Ethan whispered, partly to Rex, partly to the night. "What the hell did you find?" The darkness didn't answer. But Rex did. He barked once, sharp, certain. A sound that meant, "This matters." Ethan took a breath, tightened his grip on the flashlight, and followed the dog into the cold, waiting dark. Morning crept into the orchard without warmth. It slid through the cracked windows of the farmhouse, painting dust in pale stripes across the kitchen table, where Ethan sat hunched over a mug of coffee that had already gone cold. His hands trembled slightly. They always did in the morning, before the day settled into its rhythm of distractions. Nightmares clung to him like wet cloth, and the memory of the hidden stairwell beneath the apple tree kept replaying in fragments he couldn't fully grasp. He didn't go back down there. Not yet. He told himself he needed daylight, tools, a plan. But the truth was simpler. He wasn't ready to face whatever darkness waited underneath the orchard. He had seen enough darkness in his life to recognize the flavor of it. Rex paced the room as if he hadn't slept at all. His nails clicked along the wood floor in a precise rhythm, not restless. Alert, every few seconds he stopped at the back door, nose pressed to the gap beneath it, tail stiff. Watching, listening, like something was still moving out there. Ethan rubbed his eyes. He needed money, a job, a way out. The orchard wasn't a sanctuary. It was a burden wearing a dead man's name. Selling it seemed like the only rational plan. He had told himself that last night. He had told himself that again this morning. But every time he pictured a buyer walking the land, seeing that hidden entrance, his stomach knotted. Rex froze near the window, his ears tilted forward, shoulders tightening. Then he growled, low and controlled. Ethan stood, walked to the window and scanned the yard. Nothing but brittle trees and snow crust. The orchard looked lifeless, but Rex didn't growl at nothing. He never had. "You saw something, didn't you?" Ethan muttered. Rex turned his head just enough to make eye contact. A quiet affirmation. A soldier reporting without a word. Ethan stepped outside. The cold slammed into him, sharp enough to sting. Rex trotted ahead, nose to the ground, weaving between trees with purpose. Not wandering. Tracking. Ethan followed, breath fogging the air. Rex led him past the old shed, past the leaning fence, stopping at a spot near the back of the orchard where the grass was flattened. A faint indentation. Boot prints. More than one pair. Someone had been here during the night. Before Ethan could process that, a voice called from behind the fence. "You're the Hale boy." Ethan turned. A woman in her 60s stood at the property line, wrapped in a coat too thin for the weather, a grocery tote over her arm. Her eyes were sharp, the kind that noticed details people wished to hide. "Name's Mary Rourke. I live up the road," she said. "Didn't mean to scare you." Rex positioned himself between them immediately, not aggressive, but alert, guarding his perimeter. Mary watched him with a quick nod. "Smart dog. Good instincts," Ethan exhaled, trying to recenter. "Can I help you, Mrs. Rourke?" She hesitated, then stepped closer to the fence. "You're fixing up the place?" "Not sure yet. You should know something before you decide to stay here." The tone in her voice made Ethan's spine go rigid. Rex stepped forward again, reading the tension before he did. Mary lowered her voice. "There was a case. 5 years ago, 2 kids from town vanished, Lily and Connor Parker. Searched for weeks. FBI, sheriffs, volunteers. Nothing. Their trail just died. Right around this property." Ethan felt the cold travel through him in a different way now. "You're saying they were here?" Mary's eyes flicked toward the dead orchard. Nobody proved it. But people whispered. Your uncle kept to himself. Never wanted anyone stepping foot on this land. And when those kids went missing? She paused. He got even quieter. Ethan swallowed. Hard. His uncle had always been a distant figure. Strange, maybe. But part of him refused to believe the man had been involved in something monstrous. Did the police question him? Of course. But he was old, frail, and they found nothing. Case went cold. Mary's voice softened. Folks around here learned to stop asking questions, especially when strangers started coming around the property at night. A chill crawled up Ethan's spine. Rex growled again, confirming everything the woman said. Mary stepped back from the fence. I'm not trying to scare you, just be careful. That land remembers things. She turned and walked away, leaving Ethan standing in the brittle grass with the weight of new shadows settling over him. Rex nudged Ethan's hand, urging him to look down. The dog placed one paw directly on a fresh boot print. Ethan crouched. The tread pattern was deep, crisp. Someone had been watching the orchard. Watching him? And they weren't trying to hide it. A pulse of anger rose in Ethan's chest, cutting through the numbness. He stood and scanned the orchard again, suddenly aware of how exposed they were. The rotten trees, the sagging fence, the silence thick enough to drown in. Whoever had been here last night had returned, maybe more than once. Ethan turned back toward the farmhouse, expecting Rex to follow. But the dog didn't move. Instead, Rex pivoted toward the oldest apple tree, the one with the hidden stairwell beneath it. He stared at it with a level of intensity that made Ethan's breath hitch. Rex took 3 deliberate steps towards the tree. Then he barked once, sharp and urgent, as if telling Ethan there wasn't just a secret buried beneath that orchard. There was a trail, a scent, a truth that had been waiting for 5 long years. The wind cut across the orchard like a blade, rattling dead branches as Ethan followed Rex through the rows of trees. The dog moved with intent, not curious sniffing, but a calculated pattern, nose low, tail straight, body taut. Every few steps he stopped, inhaled, then pressed forward again as if tracking something invisible to human senses. Ethan's pulse picked up. He had learned long ago to trust that posture. Rex wasn't reacting to memory or instinct. He was following a trail. The dog finally stopped at the edge of the property where a sagging storage shed leaned sideways, one hinge cracked, the siding warped and grey like sunken bones. Ethan hadn't stepped inside yet. He had planned to avoid it altogether. Some places on a property whispered "stay out" even before anyone opened the door. Rex barked sharply once and stared directly at the shed. Ethan swallowed hard. "All right, show me." Rex pressed his body against the door, claws scraping at rotted wood. Ethan pulled the latch. The door groaned open like something waking from a long sleep. Dust exploded in the light. Inside, the air was thick, stale, carrying the smell of old oil, mildew, and something metallic underneath. The kind of smell that clung to locked rooms too long untouched. Ethan stepped inside. Rex moved ahead immediately, crossing the shed in 3 strides, pausing at the far corner. His ears lifted, his nose pressed hard to the floorboards. Ethan followed the beam of his flashlight across overturned crates, rusted tools, and spiderwebs that clung to the rafters like abandoned nets. The floor was uneven, pitted by time and weather, but one spot looked different. A square of concrete, off-color, thicker than the rest. The edges were crude, not the work of a professional. Someone had patched this in a hurry. Rex barked again, louder, bowing his head at the concrete, as if demanding Ethan look closer. Ethan crouched, brushed a layer of dust away, and froze. A faint outline appeared around the patched square. Not natural wear, not corrosion. Deliberate. He pressed his fingertips to the surface. It felt wrong. Too cold. Too smooth. The rest of the shed floor was cracked, chipped, but this patch felt almost new. Maybe 5, 6 years old. The timeline sent a chill crawling down his spine. 5 years. The exact number Mary Rourke had whispered. The missing kids. Lily and Connor Parker. Their trail ending around this property. Ethan leaned in, lowering his flashlight, and something caught his eye. A partial boot print, shallow but visible on the edge of the concrete. Not his. Too small, too narrow. Could be a woman. Could be a teenager, or someone who had been here long after the shed was supposed to be abandoned. Rex growled, low and guttural, the kind that came from deep in his chest. He wasn't warning. He was declaring something. A discovery. Ethan scanned the ground again and noticed a glint near a pile of collapsed boards. He reached out, picked it up, and felt his stomach tighten. A keychain. Blue plastic. Faded cartoon astronaut on the front. The metal ring bent, likely from force. It didn't belong in a shed from the 70s. It belonged to a child. Ethan stood slowly, his breath catching. This is impossible. Rex didn't agree. He pawed the concrete, hard enough to scrape his pads. His body shook with urgency. Ethan knelt again, pressed his palm to the center of the patch, and pushed. The surface gave a fraction of an inch. A hollow echo vibrated under his hand. Not soil. A void. Someone had sealed something beneath this floor. Something hidden, deliberately covered in concrete, but placed too close to the surface for long-term concealment. Whoever did it had been rushed, or careless, or afraid. Ethan forced himself to breathe as adrenaline surged through him. He grabbed an old crowbar leaning against the wall and wedged it under the edge of the patch. The concrete resisted once, twice, then cracked. A thin seam split open, releasing a cold draft of air that smelled of rust and something older, something untouched for years. He pried harder. The concrete fractured again. Dust plumed upward. Underneath, darkness yawned open. Rex barked wildly, tail stiff, fur raised along his spine. He circled Ethan once, pressing his shoulder against Ethan's leg as if bracing him. Ethan shined the flashlight into the gap. A narrow drop stretched beneath the shed. Wooden beams reinforced the sides, a man-made tunnel. Not deep, maybe 6 feet, but long enough to lead somewhere. The flashlight beam caught something metallic below. Not tools, not storage barrels, something smoother. He widened the opening, kicking broken concrete aside until the gap was large enough to lower himself through. A faint clang echoed from below. Ethan froze. The sound had not come from him. Rex stiffened, ears pointed forward, muscles coiling with tension. Someone was down there, or had been. Ethan held the flashlight steady and leaned farther over the opening. The dark swallowed the light, but for a split second he glimpsed movement. A shadow shifting back through the tunnel. Too quick to identify, too small to be an adult, too fluid to be an animal. His heart slammed against his ribs. A voice floated up, soft and trembling, barely more than a breath. "Help!" Ethan recoiled as if burned. His mind fought to process the single word. Thin, frightened, human. Rex snarled, the deepest sound Ethan had ever heard from him. Ethan sucked in a sharp breath, every instinct in him switching from caution to urgency. He knelt over the hole again, calling out, "Is someone down there?" Silence. Then the same voice, whisper soft, cracked with fear. "Please." Rex barked, fierce and unyielding, as if shouting down the darkness itself. Ethan stared into the void and knew with cold certainty that the orchard wasn't hiding a random mystery. It was hiding someone, or two someones, and they had been waiting a very long time. The Cedar Hollow Public Library still smelled like the 70s. Old carpet, lemon polish, dust baked into the shelves from decades of Montana summers. Ethan stepped inside with a tight jaw, Rex walking close at his side. The dog's presence drew a few startled looks, but no one objected. Small towns treated working dogs with the kind of respect usually reserved for clergy. Ethan headed straight for the archives in the back corner. The lights buzzed overhead. He pulled out microfilm reels, old binders, newspaper stacks brittle as dried leaves. He started reading. 5 years ago, July. 2 missing kids. Lily Parker, age 9. Connor Parker, age 11. Last seen walking home from the summer fair. The town shut down for weeks. Search parties scoured the woods. Volunteers combed the riverbanks. Deputies went door to door. The trail ended near his orchard. The words hit him like a punch. Every article hammered the same phrase. Last known direction, toward the old Hale orchard. At the time, his uncle had lived here alone. No family visits, no guests, no explanations. The sheriff had released a public statement back then. No evidence of foul play. No physical evidence on the property. No cause for arrest. Case cold. Ethan leaned back in the rigid wooden chair. The breath in his lungs felt tight and shallow. He tried to picture his uncle, a man he barely knew. Quiet, withheld, lonely. Was that loneliness hiding something darker, or had the man simply been caught in the orbit of something larger? Rex shifted beside him, ears pricking at a sound no human heard. Ethan glanced down. The dog's body was rigid, alert. He wasn't reacting to a memory. Something inside this building had stirred him. Before Ethan could stand, a man's voice cut through the quiet. "You're looking for the Parker kids, aren't you?" Ethan turned. An older man stood at the end of the aisle, leaning on a polished cane. His face was lined like cracked earth. His eyes sharp in a way that made Ethan straighten reflexively. Not hostile. Watchful. "You're Hale's nephew," the man said. "Your uncle wasn't a bad man, but he got himself tangled with people he shouldn't have. Powerful people." Ethan's shoulders stiffened. What people? The man hesitated, glancing at Rex as if weighing something. A group that passed through here decades back. Wealthy, private, called themselves the Hollow Creek Consortium, though folks in town whispered other names. Not the kind of men who built roads or hired ranch hands, the kind who moved things and hid things. Ethan's pulse quickened. Hid what? The man lowered his voice. People. Assets. Documents. Depends who you ask. But your uncle. He kept their secrets. Until he didn't. Ethan gripped the back of the chair. Why tell me this now? Because those people don't disappear. They wait. And if the Parker kids were taken, it didn't happen by chance. The man walked away before Ethan could ask more, his cane tapping a slow rhythm against the tile. Rex let out a soft rumble, watching the man vanish into the stacks as if memorizing every step. Ethan returned to the articles, hands unsteady. The case file didn't mention the consortium. It didn't mention his uncle. It didn't mention anything except 2 children who had walked into a summer evening and never walked out of it. Rex nudged his elbow. A sharp, urgent gesture. What is it? Ethan whispered. Rex moved toward the exit. Ethan followed him out of the library and into the icy sunlight. The dog cut across the road with unbroken focus. Ethan kept pace, breath fogging the air. Rex didn't stop until he reached the orchard again and trotted straight towards the shed. Ethan's chest tightened. Show me! Rex's nose hit the ground the second they stepped inside. The air felt colder than it had that morning. Still. Too still. Ethan moved the flashlight in slow sweeps across the cracked boards. Rex stopped at a spot against the far wall and barked once, sharp. Ethan crouched. The beam caught something dark on the wood. A stain. Faint but unmistakable. Blood. Not fresh. Old. Years old. He pressed his fingers to the grain. The stain had seeped into the wood, spread in thin tendrils like vines. Whoever had bled here hadn't left naturally. Rex pawed the spot again, nose pushing along the edge of the wall. He leaned in until his whiskers brushed the boards, inhaling deep. Then he backed up suddenly and growled. Ethan froze. Behind the wall, something shifted. A soft scrape. A movement too subtle for anything human-sized. He grabbed a rusted shovel from the corner and wedged it under the loose plank. The wood cracked. He pried it wider. Cold air rushed out. Inside the hollow wall was a strip of torn fabric. Pink. Faded. A child's shirt sleeve. Ethan felt the world tilt. Rex whined, pressing himself closer to Ethan's leg, both grounding him and urging him forward. Ethan lifted the fabric. A small safety pin was still attached to the torn edge. A floral pattern, the kind sold in the girls' section of any department store. Lily Parker had been wearing a pink shirt the day she vanished. Ethan stared at the sleeve until his vision blurred. His uncle's property. His uncle's shed. And now this. Rex barked again, louder, snapping Ethan back. There, on the ground just beyond the bloodstain, lay something else. A strip of duct tape, crumpled, edges frayed, as if ripped off in panic. Tiny strands of blonde hair clung to the adhesive. Ethan's breath caught. Connor Parker had blonde hair. The evidence was no longer speculative, no longer rumor, no longer cold. Rex backed up to the center of the shed, positioning himself between Ethan and the dark hollow beneath the floor. His eyes locked on the patch of concrete, unblinking. Ethan understood the message. Whatever had happened here wasn't just a tragedy. It was still alive, still moving, still close, and the orchard had never stopped keeping its secrets. Rex growled again, low and deliberate, as if warning Ethan that the next truth he uncovered might be the one people had died to bury. By late afternoon, the wind had shifted, carrying the sharp scent of cold iron across the orchard. Ethan stood on the porch, staring at the shed, as if he could see through its walls and into the secrets buried beneath it. Rex stayed glued to his side, tense, watching the tree line with the focus of a sniper. Ethan's mind kept circling the discoveries like a predator testing the fence. Bloodstains, a torn sleeve, blonde hair, a voice whispering from below the concrete. Every instinct screamed that he was deep inside something far larger than a cold case. A crunch of gravel snapped his attention toward the road. A black SUV rolled to a stop at the gate. Glossy, spotless, the kind of vehicle that had never seen a dirt road until today. The door opened, and a man in a tailored charcoal suit stepped out, adjusting his cuffs like he was preparing for a courtroom, not an orchard rotting in the snow. He walked toward the house with unhurried confidence, the kind of walk that said he already owned the outcome. Ethan stepped down from the porch. The man smiled with a curated politeness. "Mr. Hale, I presume. I'm Mason Ward." Ethan didn't shake his hand. "This isn't a good time." Mason didn't falter. On the contrary, he seemed amused. "I hear you've inherited quite the property. Remote, private, excellent acreage." Rex stepped between them without being asked, body stiff, lips lifting just enough to expose a sliver of teeth. Mason's eyes flicked to the dog. His smile tightened. Strong animal. German shepherds always were. Rex growled, low and deliberate, as if he recognized the man's scent and hated it. Mason continued as though nothing had happened. "I represent a development group interested in acquiring this land. We are prepared to offer 30 times the current market value. Cash, immediate transfer." Ethan blinked. Even desperate, the number was absurd. Why this place? Mason's smile never warmed. Potential. Untapped resources. Serenity. Privacy. Men like him used words like that when they meant something else entirely. Rex barked once, sharp and warning. Mason shifted his weight. "Your uncle held on to this land for decades, but the moment it became yours, several groups reached out to us. You have something valuable here, much more valuable than a run-down orchard." The words chilled Ethan's spine. "You seem to know a lot about my uncle." Mason shrugged lightly. "We do our research, and we prefer clean transitions of ownership before problems arise." The threat was subtle but unmistakable. Rex lunged a step forward, growl erupting from deep inside his chest. Mason flinched for the first time. Ethan's pulse spiked. Rex had never reacted like this to anyone. Not once. "I'm not selling," Ethan said. Mason's smile dropped entirely. He pulled a business card from his coat pocket and placed it on the railing. "Think about it. Time is a luxury you might not have." He turned and walked back toward his SUV. As he opened the driver's door, he glanced once over his shoulder. His eyes weren't threatening. They were calculating. The SUV rolled down the dirt road. Ethan watched until it disappeared over the hill. Rex continued to stare long after the vehicle was gone, as if expecting it to circle back. Ethan picked up the card. Black border. Minimal text. Mason Ward. No title. No company. He slipped it into his pocket and exhaled slowly. Then he noticed it. A flicker of movement at the edge of the orchards. Far back, near the fence line. Someone stood in the shadows between two dead trees. A figure. Still. Watching. The moment Ethan stepped toward them, the figure vanished into the woods. Rex barked after the retreating silhouette, ready to chase. But Ethan caught his collar. "Not yet," he whispered. "We don't know what we're walking into." Rex growled but stayed by his side. Twilight settled over the orchard, painting everything in bruised blue light. Ethan forced himself to breathe, forced his thoughts into order. Someone wanted this land badly enough to send a man like Mason Ward. Someone else was watching from the woods, and something beneath the shed whispered for help. He needed answers. Fast. Rex's body tensed again. The dog turned suddenly and sprinted toward the old apple tree at the center of the orchard. Ethan ran after him, heart pounding. Rex skidded to a stop at the base of the gnarled trunk, barking furiously and digging with both paws. Dirt flew behind him in frantic bursts. Ethan crouched beside him. "What now, buddy?" Rex dug deeper, claws scraping, nostrils flared. Then his paw hit something metallic. Ethan shoved the soil aside. A heavy iron hook jutted out of the earth, bolted into a thick wooden plank buried beneath the roots. A hatch. His breath hitched. He gripped the hook and pulled. The wood groaned. Roots snapped. The hatch lifted halfway before catching on something. Rex barked, pushing at the edge with his shoulder. Ethan pulled again. Harder. The hatch finally gave, opening into a hollow darkness colder than the evening air. A staircase descended into the earth. Deep, narrow, concealed by nature and time. Ethan shined the flashlight inside. Dust swirled. A faint metallic clang echoed from below, far too far down for a simple storage cellar. Someone had built this intentionally. Rex stepped onto the first stair without hesitation. "No?" Ethan warned, grabbing his harness. "Not yet. We don't know what's down there." But Rex didn't look afraid. He looked certain, determined. As if this was the trail he had been trying to lead Ethan to since the moment they arrived. Ethan pulled his hand back and whispered, "Okay." They descended together into the dark, and Ethan knew, with a cold certainty settling beneath his ribs, that whatever lay beneath this orchard was more than a secret. It was a graveyard, or worse, a prison. The air grew colder with each step down the narrow staircase, a kind of cold that didn't belong to weather. It felt stored, preserved, as if whatever lay beneath the orchard had been sealed away from sunlight and time. Ethan steadied his hand on the railing, the flashlight trembling just enough to betray the pulse, hammering in his wrist. Rex descended ahead of him, silent now, his paws landing with controlled precision. Every instinct in the dog's body leaned forward, his ears locked, his tail rigid. He wasn't exploring. He was hunting truth. At the bottom of the stairs, they reached a concrete corridor, barely tall enough for Ethan to stand upright. Rusted pipes lined the ceiling. Moisture dripped in slow, rhythmic taps that echoed off the walls like a pulse. A door sat at the far end, steel and heavy, the surface scarred by old strikes. Someone had once tried to break in, or break out. Ethan pressed his fingertips against it. Ice cold. A lock mechanism sat near the handle, snapped and bent as if someone had forced it. He pulled gently. The door hesitated, then creaked open. The beam of the flashlight swept across a room no bigger than a shipping container. The first thing he saw were shelves, wooden, splintered, covered in dust thick enough to muffle sound. On the shelves lay objects so out of place that Ethan's chest tightened. A child's jacket, pink with faded unicorns. A tiny red flashlight missing its batteries. Stuffed toys crushed under fallen boards. A pair of socks so small they could fit in his palm. Rex stepped inside and froze, nose twitching. Then he moved toward a far corner, sniffing a pile of folded blankets. His tail lowered. He whimpered once, barely audible, as if he had found something too fragile to bark at. Ethan swallowed hard and moved the flashlight again. His beam hit two small shoes sitting neatly side by side on the floor. Shoes far newer than anything else in the room. Shoes that did not belong to a place untouched for years. Ethan crouched and picked one up. The rubber sole was clean, hardly scuffed, recently worn. "Someone was here," he whispered. "Recently." Rex growled, deep and sharp. He pushed his nose along the wall behind the shelves, inhaling with urgent, frantic focus. When his nose hit a particular section of brick, he barked, short, decisive, commanding. Ethan's stomach sank. "There's something behind that." The wall didn't look different, but the bricks felt wrong when he pressed his palm to them. Too thin, too hollow. He grabbed a rusted crowbar from the floor, wedged it into a seam, and pulled hard. The brick shifted. Dust exploded out, choking the air. Rex stepped back but didn't break his stare. Ethan heaved again. A slab of brick loosened and crashed onto the floor. Behind the wall was a cavity no wider than a closet, and inside that cavity were 2 children. Ethan's breath caught in his throat. His flashlight trembled over their faces. Pale, gaunt, eyes wide and terrified. Their bodies curled against each other as if they'd been bracing for something that never stopped coming. The little girl flinched at the light. The boy shielded her with his arm, though his fingers shook uncontrollably. Rex didn't bark. He didn't move. He simply lowered himself to the ground, head bowed, tail still, as if trying to show them he was there to protect, not harm. Ethan softened his voice. "It's okay. You're safe. I'm here to help." The boy stared back, chest rising and falling too fast. His voice cracked when he spoke. "Are you with him?" "With who?" The girl whispered the answer, her voice barely more than breath. "The man in black." A shiver traveled down Ethan's spine. "No, I'm not with him, I promise." The boy hesitated, then slowly lowered his arm from around his sister. The girl clutched a stuffed rabbit missing one ear. Her eyes lingered on Rex. "He won't hurt you," Ethan assured. "He's here to help." The girl reached a trembling hand toward Rex. The dog stayed perfectly still as her fingers brushed his fur. Then, with fragile trust, she leaned forward and pressed her forehead gently to his head. Rex closed his eyes. Ethan felt something inside him break. He leaned closer. "What are your names?" The boy swallowed. "Connor." The girl whispered. "Lily." Ethan's breath hitched. Lily and Connor Parker. 5 years missing. Declared lost, remembered only through faded posters taped to diner windows and the hollow grief in their parents' eyes. But they were here. Alive. Barely. Ethan helped them from the cavity slowly, carefully, as if they were made from thin glass. They clung to him once standing, legs weak, bodies trembling from fear and cold. Rex pressed against their sides, forming a barrier between them and the darkness. Ethan wrapped his jacket around the girl's shoulders. "How long have you been here?" Connor answered. "A few weeks, not 5 years. We were somewhere else before. Dark rooms, different places. He kept moving us." "Why bring you here?" Connor shook his head. "He needed to hide us again. He said the police were getting close. He said this place belonged to him once." Ethan felt the orchard's cold grip tighten around him. "Did you see his face?" "No." Connor's voice cracked. "He always wore black. Mask, gloves, everything." Lily clung tighter to Rex. "But he talked to us. He said our parents forgot us, that we didn't matter anymore." Rex growled, soft, furious, his ears flattening. Ethan swallowed hard and placed a steady hand on Connor's shoulder. "Your parents never stopped looking for you, and I swear to you no one is taking you again." A faint noise echoed through the tunnel above. A footstep, then another. Ethan's blood turned cold. Rex snapped his head toward the stairwell and bared his teeth. Someone else was in the orchard. Someone who knew exactly what was hidden under this land, and someone who would not be happy that Ethan had just found what they'd spent 5 years trying to bury. Night dropped over the orchard like a shroud. No wind, no moon, just the suffocating quiet that falls before violence. Ethan had barricaded the farmhouse doors, moved Lily and Connor upstairs, and sat by the front window with a shotgun across his knees. He didn't want to use it, but he would. Rex remained planted at the foot of the stairs, eyes fixed on the door as if he could feel the night tightening around them. Every muscle in his body vibrated with silent warning. Ethan whispered, "You hear it too." Rex didn't look away. He didn't have to. Headlights appeared at the end of the long dirt drive. One vehicle, then another, then a third. Engines rumbling in the dark. Ethan's breath froze in his chest. Mason Ward stepped out of the lead SUV, no suit this time. Black tactical jacket, gloves, purpose in his stride. 4 masked men exited behind him, each carrying gear far too specialized to mistake for anything innocent. Mason raised his voice just enough to carry. "Mr. Hale, we are here to retrieve what is ours. Do not make this messy." Ethan's fists clenched. He rose slowly from the window, heart pounding. He had no idea how many men were outside. But he had one advantage, a German shepherd who had never once backed down from the worst humanity could offer. Rex growled, deep and steady, the sound of a soldier preparing for impact. The men advanced. Ethan stepped away from the stairs and positioned himself beside Rex. The shotgun felt heavier than any rifle he had carried overseas. "Stay behind me," he murmured. But Rex stepped in front instead, body aligned with the door, ready to take the first hit if it came to that. The first blow cracked against the front door, then another. The wood splintered. A masked man kicked it open and lunged inside. Rex moved like lightning. He hit the intruder mid-chest, teeth clamping onto the man's forearm. The man screamed and staggered back. 2 more rushed in. Ethan fired once into the ceiling to stall them, then swung the butt of the shotgun into one man's jaw. The fight exploded in seconds. One masked man grabbed Ethan from behind, pinning his arms. Rex released his first target and launched at the second attacker, slamming him against the wall. The man crashed into the kitchen table, tools scattering everywhere. Another tried to grab Rex with a looped strap, but Rex twisted, snapping at the man's thigh. Blood spattered the floorboards. The attacker fell back, cursing. Ethan elbowed the man holding him, breaking free long enough to shove him into a bookshelf. Wood cracked. The man groaned, but staggered forward again. A shot rang out from outside. Not at Ethan. A warning shot. Mason's voice followed. "Enough. Bring me the kids." "Now." Ethan's heart seized. "You're not touching them." Mason stepped into the doorway, calm as a surgeon. He raised a pistol. "Your uncle made promises he didn't keep. Those children are leverage. Nothing more." Rex barked, vicious and commanding, positioning between Mason and Ethan. Mason didn't blink. Dogs are loyal, but even loyalty bleeds. The moment he pulled the trigger, Rex lunged. The bullet grazed the dog's shoulder. Rex yelped in pain, but kept going, slamming into Mason's arm and knocking the gun aside. The pistol skidded across the floor. Ethan charged forward, tackling Mason to the ground. They rolled. Mason swung hard, catching Ethan's jaw. Stars burst behind Ethan's eyes. He swung back, fist connecting with Mason's ribs. Mason grunted, but his strength didn't falter. The remaining masked men gathered near the stairs. One reached the 3rd step. Lily screamed from above. Connor shouted, "Leave us alone!" Ethan's blood boiled. He tore free of Mason's grip, grabbed the nearest attacker, and threw him down the hallway. Rex, limping but relentless, hurled himself at another man, clamping onto his calf until the man collapsed. Then it happened. The driver of the SUV, a man who had stayed outside until now, rushed in and stopped. He raised his hands, voice shaking. "Enough! Stop!" Mason snapped. "Harris, grab the kids!" Harris didn't move. His eyes cut to Rex, to Ethan, to the 2 terrified children on the stairs. Something inside him cracked open. Finally, he said, "I'm not doing this. Not to kids." Mason snarled. "You swore an oath to the consortium." Harris shook his head, jaw trembling. "I swore an oath in Iraq, and we didn't fight over there to come home and steal children in the dark." Mason reached for a knife at his belt. Harris kicked it away, grabbed Ethan's arm, and pulled him towards the back door. "Go! Take them! I'll stall them!" Ethan didn't waste a second. "Rex, kids, move!" Lily rushed down the stairs. Connor grabbed her hand. Ethan scooped them both toward the exit. Rex limped after them, leaving a trail of blood but refusing to slow down. Behind them, Harris shoved a shelving unit to block the attackers and shouted, "Run!" Ethan burst through the back door into the cold night, kids clinging to his coat. Rex pushed ahead, clearing the path with sheer force of will. They sprinted across the orchard. Footsteps thundered behind them. Mason roared orders into the dark, his voice shaking with rage. Gunshots cracked through the night. Rex barked, forcing the children down behind a fallen tree. Ethan dropped beside them, shielding their bodies with his own. Rex stayed standing. Even wounded, even bleeding, he faced the darkness head-on. Teeth bared, ears pinned, ready to take another bullet before letting anyone near his people. Ethan whispered through the cold, "You hold, Rex, you hold." A final gunshot echoed, then silence. Absolute silence. The attackers fell back, retreating to their vehicles. Engines roared, tires spit gravel. 3 SUVs vanished into the night, swallowed by the long dirt road. They weren't gone for good. But for now, they were gone. Ethan clutched the kids close, heart threatening to break through his ribs. Rex collapsed finally, breath shaking, blood darkening his fur. Ethan caught him before he hit the ground. His voice cracked. "You're okay. Stay with me. You hear me? Stay with me." Rex blinked up at him, loyal to his last breath, and pressed his muzzle weakly into Ethan's palm. No words passed between them, but Ethan knew. Rex would die standing between him and danger if that was the cost. And tonight the orchard had demanded a price. The hospital room was too bright, too sterile, too calm for what the past hours had been. Ethan sat beside Rex on the floor, one hand buried in the dog's thick fur, the other gripping the chair leg to steady himself. Rex lay curled on a padded blanket, shoulder bandaged, breathing slow but steady. Alive. Barely, but alive. Lily sat in a nearby bed, IV in her arm, Connor in the chair beside her. Both watched Rex like he was the anchor holding the world together. A doctor had told Ethan the dog's wound missed the artery by inches. Inches. Any deeper, and the story would have ended differently. Ethan hadn't let go of Rex since. A detective entered the room quietly. His badge read, "Captain Mills." His voice was low, respectful. "Mr. Hale, federal agents are downstairs. They want to speak with you. They said it's urgent." Ethan nodded but didn't move. Mills hesitated, then kneeled beside Rex and placed a hand gently on the dog's head. "Your partner saved these kids. The Bureau knows it." Rex blinked slowly, tired but alert enough to acknowledge the praise with a soft exhale. When Ethan finally stood, Connor whispered, "Come back soon." Ethan forced a smile. "I'm not going anywhere." Downstairs, the lobby had transformed into a war room. Police officers, federal agents, child services staff, and reporters stood in clusters, murmuring like a hive that had just been kicked open. Photographs of Lily and Connor from their missing posters hung on a bulletin board beside maps, timelines, names. The Parker parents were there too, tear-stained and trembling, clutching each other as if they hadn't dared breathe in 5 years. Ethan saw them through the glass window of a side room, Lily and Connor held between them, and felt something in his chest tighten. Agent Dana Rourke of the FBI stepped toward him. Sharp suit, hair tied back, eyes like cold steel, but not unkind. "Mr. Hale," she said, "I heard what you did. More importantly, I heard what your dog did." Ethan didn't have the energy to process gratitude. "Where's Mason Ward?" A small smile touched her lips. "In custody. Your friend, the driver who turned on him, helped us intercept the SUVs outside town. Ward's facing charges from kidnapping to trafficking to attempted murder. Ethan exhaled, shoulders dropping as if someone had finally loosened the rope around his chest. And the others. Being hunted as we speak, and we found something else. She motioned him into a conference room. Laid out on the table were the items from the hidden room. The toys, the blankets, the coded documents Ethan had collected, and, most revealing, 2 folders with names scratched off, numbers rewritten. We had our analysts cross-check the ledgers, Rourke said. Some of the files were hidden inside the concrete walls. Some were in the steel crate near the stairs. You essentially unearthed the entire case. Ethan stared at the papers. What does any of this have to do with my uncle? Rourke kept her voice level. Your uncle, Martin Hale, wasn't involved in the kidnappings. Not willingly. He discovered the trafficking ring years ago when Ward's group used the orchard as a temporary holding site. But instead of joining them, he sabotaged their records, destroyed evidence that would have helped them relocate the children, and started slowly funneling information to law enforcement. One agent said Martin left breadcrumbs hidden in places only someone he trusted would ever find. Ethan froze. He was waiting for you. Rourke continued. Your uncle was dying. He didn't have time to finish what he started. But he knew you were a Marine. He knew you had the instincts. He knew you had Rex. Ethan swallowed hard. He thought I'd actually come back. Rourke laid a hand lightly on the folder. He counted on it. The words struck deeper than he expected. Martin Hale, the man Ethan barely knew, had left him the orchard not as a burden, but as a mission, a continuation of something he couldn't finish. Rourke tapped the table. And the dog. Rex is a K9. He identified the scent trails before any of our forensic teams could. He alerted to blood spatter under years of dust. He located the sealed wall. He protected the victims at risk to his own life. She paused. We're putting his name in the official report. He's the primary discovering agent. Ethan blinked. You're serious. Dead serious, Rourke said. When this goes public, your dog will be known nationwide. He nodded, throat tightening. He deserves that. Rourke straightened, her tone shifting. There's one more thing. She opened another file and slid it forward. Inside were photos taken years apart, locations from different states, names of missing children. At the center was one of the masked men, Ward's right hand. The man in black. Ethan whispered. He has been operating for over a decade. We believe Ward answered to him, not the other way around. And your evidence gives us enough to dismantle half the trafficking network he worked with. Ethan felt a surge of something like fury and relief tangled together. So it's over. Rourke shook her head. This part is, but these rings never work alone. His jaw clenched. What happens now? You go home. You recover. Those kids will need stability, therapy, witnesses they can trust. And Rex needs medical clearance. She paused. But make no mistake, Ethan. You just became the key witness in one of the biggest child trafficking cases ever traced through the Northwest. He exhaled slowly, absorbing the enormity of it. And your uncle? Rourke added, softer now. He didn't just leave you land. He left you purpose. Ethan didn't answer. His voice wasn't steady enough. Back upstairs, Lily and Connor sat beside Rex. He lifted his head as Ethan approached, tail thumping weakly but with pride. Ethan knelt, pressing his forehead gently to Rex's. You did it, he whispered. You found them. You saved them. Rex huffed a warm breath against Ethan's cheek. Honor, understanding, bond. The kids leaned against Ethan, small hands gripping his sleeve. Are we safe now? Lily asked. He wrapped an arm around both of them. You're safe, he said, because he found you. Rex closed his eyes, chest rising and falling with slow determination, as though he understood every word. For the first time in days, maybe years, Ethan felt something lift inside him. Not peace, not yet, but truth. The orchard had been a grave of secrets. Now it was a birthplace of justice, and Rex, wounded but unbroken, had exposed every lie buried beneath it. The world would soon know the full story. But first, Ethan just let himself breathe. Autumn drifted slowly into Cedar Hollow, the kind of season that softened edges and made the air feel gentler on the skin. What had once been a dead orchard now breathed differently. The wind no longer whispered warnings. It carried laughter, footsteps, and the steady hammering of volunteers building something new on land that had almost been forgotten. Ethan Hale leaned against the newly repaired fence, watching Lily and Connor toss a soft rubber ball across the yard. Rex lay in the grass between them, his injured shoulder wrapped but healing. Every time the ball bounced near him, he lifted his head, eyes bright, tail sweeping the ground with slow authority. The kids called out, "Come on, Angel Dog, your turn!" And Rex answered with a proud grunt, nudging the ball gently back toward them. Angel Dog. Ethan still hadn't gotten used to the name, but the town had adopted it faster than he expected. The hospital staff had used it first, then the sheriff, then reporters. Now the entire community spoke of him like a living legend. A dog who had barked into the dark and unearthed a nightmare no one else had dared to believe existed. Ethan glanced at the orchard beyond the fencing. Rows of dead trees were being removed, piece by piece. New saplings would come next spring. New life where silence once lived. Footsteps approached. Sheriff Brooks stopped beside him, crossing his arms. "Place looks different already. Still doesn't feel real," Ethan replied. Brooks nodded toward the field. "Kids seem to be healing faster than anyone expected, especially that little guy." Connor stood pressed against Rex's side now, running a hand through the dog's fur with quiet focus. 5 years of captivity had carved shadows into the boy's eyes, but every day since the rescue, Rex had carved a little light back in. "They trust him," Ethan said. "They should," Brooks answered. "Half this town trusts him more than their own shadows." There was a pause before Brooks added, "You know people are calling you something too." Ethan raised a brow. "The last keeper. The man your uncle was waiting for." He let out a breath, not quite a laugh. "Feels more like the place kept me than the other way around." Brooks didn't argue. He just clapped Ethan on the shoulder. "You did right by these kids, and by your uncle." Ethan looked out across the orchard again. "I'm trying." And he was. For the first time in years, trying didn't hurt. When the sheriff left, Ethan walked toward the house, or rather, what would soon become the Cedar Hollow Renewal Center. Contractors had already begun the conversion, tearing down walls, opening up spaces, planning classrooms, therapy rooms, and small cabins where rescued kids and abuse survivors could live temporarily. He had thought about selling the land, about running, about letting someone else carry the weight. But when Rex had stood guard over Lily and Connor in the hospital room, refusing to sleep unless both kids had fallen asleep first, Ethan understood something he hadn't seen clearly until then. The orchard wasn't a burden. It was a calling. Inside, he found Ms. Hargrove, a retired counselor who had volunteered to help with the new program. She was taking notes for the first wave of renovations. "Ethan, the architects want your input on the north building. Tell them to tear out everything except the foundation," he said. "That old space needs to breathe." She nodded, then paused. "It's remarkable what you're doing. Most people run from darkness. You're building a place to help others climb out of it." Ethan shook his head. "I'm not doing it alone." A bark sounded from outside, sharp but playful. Rex had dropped the ball in front of Connor, then nudged it again, urging him to throw. The boy giggled, a sound Ethan wasn't sure he'd ever heard from him yet. Lily joined in, the two of them laughing as Rex darted back and forth with surprising energy for a dog who nearly died days ago. "He's the brave one," Ethan said quietly. Ms. Hargrove followed his gaze. "He's something special. More than special." Ethan swallowed. If he hadn't found them... She placed a hand on his arm. But he did. Later, as the sun lowered behind the ridge, Ethan stood beneath the old apple tree where it all began. The tree was half dead, hollowed at the core, but its roots still clung to the soil like it refused to give up. He ran a hand along the rough bark. "You kept your secrets long enough," he murmured, rustling behind him. Rex padded up, shoulder still stiff but posture steady. The dog stopped beside Ethan and leaned in, warm and reassuring. Ethan rested a hand on Rex's neck. "We're going to make this place different," Ethan whispered. "No more hiding. No more fear." Rex lifted, his head, eyes meeting Ethan's with that same unwavering gravity. As if answering, as if agreeing. Beyond them, Lily and Connor walked out from the house. Connor held something behind his back. When they reached Ethan, Connor revealed it. A small wooden plaque, carefully carved by one of the volunteers. It read, "The Angel Dog House, in honor of the German Shepherd who saved us." A tightness formed in Ethan's throat. "You two did this?" Lily nodded shyly. "Because he didn't just find us. He stayed with us, even when he was hurt." Connor added, "He watches over everyone now, like an angel." Rex stepped forward, sniffing the plaque, tail thumping once before he sat upright, chest out, as if accepting a title he had already earned. Ethan knelt in front of him, voice low. "Guess you're officially the guardian now." Rex placed a paw gently on Ethan's knee. A vow, a promise, a bond. As night settled over the orchard, the lights from the half-built center glowed warm through the windows. The sound of children's laughter drifted up the hill. The land no longer felt cursed or haunted. It felt alive. For the first time, Ethan allowed himself to breathe in hope, not fear. And with Rex beside him, he knew the orchard would never be silent again. Cedar Hollow had never seen so many news vans parked on its narrow main street. Antennas rose like strange metal trees, reporters paced with microphones in hand, and the courthouse steps, usually empty, buzzed with voices, cameras, and flashes like fireflies in daylight. Ethan stepped out into the crisp afternoon air with Rex at his side. The dog wore a light vest to protect the healing wound, his posture proud, ears perked high. He walked with the same calm determination he'd had the night he dug into the rotten orchard and changed everything. Lily and Connor watched from the front row with their parents, hands clasped, their eyes following Rex like they were watching a guardian angel take the stage. Volunteers from the renewal center stood behind them. Sheriff Brooks, Agent Rourke. Even the former getaway driver, the veteran who had switched sides, stood quietly to the left, now wearing a county-issued visitor badge. This wasn't just a press briefing. It was the closing of a wound that had taken 5 years to stop bleeding. The mayor introduced Ethan, stepping aside as microphones shifted toward him, the crowd leaning forward. "Mr. Hale, your uncle's case, the recovery of Lily and Connor Parker, and the takedown of a trafficking network all started at your property. How does it feel today?" Ethan's voice carried steady through the speakers. "It feels like justice finally found daylight." Cameras clicked rapidly. Reporters called out new questions. "Is it true you're turning the orchard into a rehabilitation center? How is Rex doing? What made you suspect something was buried on the land?" Ethan raised a hand gently. One question at a time. A young, female reporter stepped forward, holding her notebook close. Then let me ask the one everyone wants to know. That first night at the orchard. Why do you think Rex barked the way he did? What did he sense? The crowd quieted. Ethan looked down at Rex. The dog looked back, amber eyes steady, as if the two shared a language only they understood. Ethan rested a hand on Rex's head and exhaled a slow breath that carried months of fear, grief, and something bigger faith. I don't think he barked because he sensed danger, Ethan said. He paused, letting the silence settle over the crowd. I think he barked for the truth. Gasps and murmurs rippled through the onlookers. Rex lifted his chin, giving a low, quiet woof that echoed like a final signature on the story. Reporters smiled. Camera shutters went wild. Connor laughed softly from the front row, whispering, "That's our angel dog." Ethan continued. Rex didn't just find those kids. He didn't just survive the fight. He carried the weight of a secret my uncle tried to expose years ago, and he protected all of us while doing it. He's not just a hero. He's proof that sometimes the loudest call for help comes from a place we learned to ignore. Sergeant Rourke nodded from the sidelines, expression unusually soft. Another reporter chimed in. What will happen to the orchard now? Ethan straightened, shoulders firm. The Cedar Hollow Renewal Center opens next month. It will serve missing children who are found, kids recovering from abuse, and anyone who needs a safe place to land. Therapy, housing, counseling, all on the orchard grounds. And Rex, someone shouted. Ethan's smile was small but sure. He's the guardian in residence. This is his land as much as mine. Rex barked again, louder this time, and the kids giggled. The veteran in the visitor badge stepped forward hesitantly. Reporters turned their lenses toward him. Ethan met his eyes with a calm acknowledgement. The man swallowed hard. I just want to say, I saw enough darkness overseas. When I saw kids in that van, I couldn't be part of that. Thank you for giving me a chance to help fix something. Ethan nodded once, firm. Redemption isn't a luxury. It's a choice. You made the right one. The crowd seemed to take in the moment, breath by breath. No one judged him. Not today. Today was about rising, not falling. Before anyone else could ask questions, Ethan stepped closer to the microphones. There's one more thing. The cameras zoomed in. He looked directly into the lens, as though speaking not to reporters, but to every person watching from living rooms and phone screens across the country. This story isn't about me, he said. It's about a dog who refused to give up. A dog who dug through rotten wood and lies and fear to pull two kids back into the world. He rested a hand on Rex's back. And I know many of you out there have your own stories about a dog who saved you, maybe not from a hidden room or a long-buried secret, but from loneliness, grief, or losing your way. Rex lifted his head, ears sharp. Ethan held the camera's gaze. What's your story with a loyal pet? The crowd erupted in applause. Rex barked once more, a clear, ringing sound that echoed off the courthouse walls like a final stamp of truth. Reporters leaned in to capture it. Families wiped tears. Lily and Connor clapped wildly. The moment became something larger than Cedar Hollow, larger than the orchard, larger than any one person, a testament to courage, instinct, healing, and the kind of loyalty that doesn't need words. Ethan bent down, pressing his forehead gently to Rex's. Let's go home, he whispered. They walked off the courthouse steps together, side by side. Guardian and keeper, survivor and sentinel, man and dog. And the world watched them go, carrying with them a legacy that would never again be buried. If this story moved you, share it. Support your local rescues. And if you want to follow more true stories of courage and German Shepherd heroes, stay with our channel. Their stories deserve to be told.